Welcome to the Vault.
Welcome back to the Vault. Today we are going over a 60 card deck I created with a focus on the Esper colors, black, white, and blue, and a primary strategy of Spirit Tribal with an emphasis on control. So let's get right into it. First, let's talk about Planeswalkers. Our first Planeswalker is Dovin, Hand of Control. He costs 2 and Hybrid Azorius, 3 total, for a 5 loyalty Planeswalker. He serves as a way to slow down spells decks, and has a temporary pacifism type effect attached to him. Kasmina, Enigmatic Mentor. She costs 3 and a blue, 4 total, for a 5 loyalty Planeswalker. She helps deter the Fatal Push and Lightning Bolt type plays, also negating pesky direct damage decks. Kaya, Bane of the Dead. She costs 3 and triple Hybrid Orzhov, 6 total, for a 7 loyalty Planeswalker. Her static ability lets us get around hexproof of any kind, heroic intervention or otherwise, and her -3 ability is incredibly useful for almost any annoying creature. Kaya, the Inexorable. This new version of Kaya costs 3 and Orzhov, 5 total, for a 5 loyalty Planeswalker. Our main focus here is her +1 ability to keep our creatures alive and reusable, while her -3 is also quite powerful. The Wanderer, our last Planeswalker in the deck. They cost 3 and a white, 4 total, for a 5 loyalty Planeswalker. The static reads, prevent all non-combat damage dealt to you and permanents you control. Goodbye, Lightning Bolt. This category in the Vault today is utility cards. These are cards I didn't really have another category for, and they didn't quite fit in the other more specific categories. So I'll just go over them now, that way you guys can have some variation in your decks. Also, as a side note, this is not a top tier deck by any stretch. There are no fetch lands, no shock lands even in the deck. I think the most expensive card in the deck is either Halvar, God of Battle, or quite possibly the Alrund, God of the Cosmos, in the sideboard. I don't quite know all the prices, but I'm saying Halvar is the most expensive card in the deck, and he's probably maybe $5 to $8, maybe somewhere in that range. So with that out of the way, let us jump into utility cards. The first card in this pile is Pore Over the Pages. Costs 3 blue for a sorcery that reads, draw 3 cards, untap up to 2 lands, then discard a card. The next card is Succumb to Temptation. 1 black for an instant. You draw 2 cards and lose 2 life. A lot of these cards are card draw based because I didn't really have anywhere else to put them, but most of them can do multiple things if you need to. The greatest example of this is Esper Charm, which costs white, blue, black, and has choose 1 of 3 modes. You can either destroy target enchantment, or draw 2 cards, or target player discards 2 cards. Our main use will either be getting rid of pesky enchantments or drawing 2 cards. The next card is Deliver Unto Evil. We won't get the full use out of this card as we're not running Grixis, so we won't have Nicol Bolas in our deck. But it is 2 and a black for a sorcery that reads, choose up to 4 target cards in your graveyard. If you control a Bolas Planeswalker, return those cards to your hand. Otherwise, an opponent chooses 2 of them. Leave the chosen cards in your graveyard and put the rest into your hand, and then exile Deliver Unto Evil. So we have potential to get some creatures back if we don't keep them alive long enough to win the game. The next card here is Rally the Ranks. 1 and a white for an enchantment. As it enters the battlefield, choose a creature type. In this deck, that creature will be spirits or gods, depending on how many you run. But in this case, we are focusing on spirits because that's what we have the most of in the deck. And it reads, creatures you control of the chosen type get +1/+1, so it'll make all of our spirits stronger. Team Spirit and all. Next up is Halvar God of Battle, which I generally play this deck On his front side, I'm not going to worry about the back side. He is 2 white for a 4/4 legendary creature god. He reads, creatures you control that are enchanted or equipped have double strike. At the beginning of each combat, you may attach target aura or equipment attached to a creature you control to target creature you control. So you can change your equipment holders or something like that. Or just use them as a 4/4. I mean, it's pretty decent. The next card, and I believe the last card, yep. The last card in this category is Cloud Blazer. 3 white-blue, 5 mana total for a 2/2. Human Scout with flying. When it enters the battlefield, you gain 2 life and draw 2 cards. So mostly this pile is utility or other uses that we don't see in other sections of the deck. And with that, let us get into creatures. Let's start off with Eidolon of Philosophy, which costs 1 blue for an enchantment creature, Spirit. It's a 1/2. You can pay 6 and a blue, 7 mana total, sacrifice it, and draw 3 cards. The other Eidolon we run in the deck is Eidolon of Obstruction, which costs 1 and a white for a 2/1 enchantment creature, Spirit, with first strike that says loyalty abilities of Planeswalkers your opponents control cost 1 more to activate. So they have to pay to activate their Planeswalkers. Next up is Forbidding Spirit, 1 white for a 3/3 Spirit Cleric. When it enters the battlefield, until your next turn, creatures can't attack you or a Planeswalker you control unless their controller pays 2 for each of those creatures. Good against token decks or very hasty small creature decks like mono red or mono white, that kind of thing. Next up is Kaiga the Tidestar, 5 and a blue for a 5/5 Dragon Spirit legendary. It's flying. It says when Kaiga the Tidestar dies, gain control of target creature. There's an exploit here with Kaya the Inexorable's +1 ability. You can put the Ghost Form counter on Kaiga, and then if it dies or is put into exile, return it to your hand. Still dies. Get control of it, and then you can replay Kaiga. Next up is Sky Spirit. Costs 1 white-blue for a 2/2 Spirit with flying and first strike. We are also running Niblis of Frost, 2 blue for a 3/3 Spirit with flying. Has prowess, which says whenever you cast a non-creature spell, this creature gets +1/+1 until end of turn. And whenever you cast an instant or sorcery spell, tap target creature an opponent controls. That creature does not untap during its controller's next untap step. The only creature we are running 4 of in the deck is Niblis of Dusk, which costs 2 and a blue for a 2/1 flying spirit with prowess. And as you can see, there are 4 copies. It's the only creature I'm running 4 copies of in the entire deck. And with that, we'll jump into perhaps the longest section of the deck with the control portion. Moving right along, let's talk about control, which is a lot of what this deck likes to do. Lots of instant speed interaction, very flashy looking cards. So the only card in this pile that I'm running multiple copies of is Mortify, of which there are 2 copies. They cost 1 a white and a black, and read destroy target creature or enchantment at instant speed. With that, let's get into everything else this group of cards has to offer. We have Swords to Plowshares, 1 white for an instant, exile target creature. Its controller gains life equal to its power. Deny the Divine, 2 and a blue for an instant, counter target spell or enchantment spell. If that spell was countered this way, exile it instead of putting it into its owner's graveyard. Crippling Fear, 2 black for a sorcery. Choose a creature type, in this case mostly spirits. Creatures that aren't of the chosen type get -3/-3 until end of turn, potentially game winning if you do it right. Prison Realm, 2 and a white for an enchantment. When it enters, exile target creature or planeswalker an opponent controls until it leaves the battlefield. When it enters the battlefield, scry 1. Banishing Light, similar concept to Prison Realm, 2 and a white. When it enters, exile target non-land permanent an opponent controls until Banishing Light leaves the battlefield. Kunaros, Hound of Athreos, 1 white-black, 3 total for a 3/3 legendary creature hound with Vigilance, Menace, and Lifelink. Creature cards in graveyards can't enter the battlefield, and players can't cast spells from their graveyard. No flashback or anything of the sort. We have 1 copy of Glass Casket, 1 and a white for an artifact. When it enters the battlefield, exile target creature an opponent controls with converted mana cost 3 or less until Glass Casket leaves the battlefield. We have Time Wipe, which costs 2 white-blue, so 5 total for a sorcery. Return a creature you control to its owner's hand, then destroy all creatures. We have Sentinel Totem, which costs 1, is an artifact. When it enters the battlefield, scry 1, you can tap, Exile Sentinel Totem, exile all cards from all graveyards. Also have Cancel, 1 blue, counter target spell. Negate, 1 in a blue, instant, counter target non-creature spell. Drown in the Loch, which is blue and a black. For an instant, says choose one. Counter target spell with converted mana cost less than or equal to the number of cards in its controller's graveyard, or destroy a target creature with converted mana cost less than or equal to the number of cards in its controller's graveyard. And the last card in this pile, trying to wrap it up quickly, is Dovin's Veto, costs white and a blue. This spell can't be countered at instant speed, counter target non-creature spell. With that, let us get into Manabase and wrap up this video. Moving on to Manabase, I believe there are 24 lands in the deck. Before we get into the sideboard, we have 3 snow-covered plains, 4 snow-covered swamps. Oh, just kidding, just 4 swamps, 3 of which are snow-covered. Not that it's too important here. And we have 5 islands, because most of the spirits include multiple pips of blue in their casting cost. Other than that, we have a couple of utility lands, or certain lands. We got a filter land with Mystic Gate. We have the beautiful, my borderless Mist Gate Pathway, taps for a blue. An Esper Panorama, which can find one of any basic land in our deck. And then we've got a bunch of tap lands, like Azorius Chancery, Glacial Floodplain, Gates of Istfell, Submerged Boneyard. What the heck is going on with my camera? There we go, a little bit of focus would be nice. Vivid Meadow, Meandering River, Snowfield Sinkhole, which I have in foil, and Arcane Sanctum. All come in tapped to some degree and such. So with that, let's get into sideboard, and we will close the vault for today. All right. To wrap this up, we have a 15-card sideboard, as is allowed in Modern. And let's get to it. So in here we have Obzedat, Ghost Council, 1 white, black, 5 total, for a 5/5 spirit. When it enters, target opponent loses 2 life and you gain 2 life. At the beginning of your end step, you may exile it. If you do, return it to the battlefield. At the beginning of your next upkeep, it gains haste. Spoils of Adventure, 4 white, blue, for an instant, costs 1 less for each creature in your party. You gain 3 life and draw 3 cards. Shimmer Possibility, 1 in a blue, for a sorcery. Look at the top 4 of your library, put 1 of them into your hand, the rest on the bottom. Oops. Vanish into Memory, 2 white, blue, for an instant, exile a target creature. You draw cards equal to the creature's power. At the beginning of your next upkeep, return that card to the battlefield under its owner's control. If you do, discard equal to the creature's toughness. We also have Replicating Ring, 3 mana for an artifact. Tap, add a mana of any color. At the beginning of your upkeep, put a night counter on Replicating Ring. If it has 8 or more, remove all of them. Create 8 of the same thing, called Replicated Ring, with tap, add 1 mana of any color. We have Alrund, God of the Cosmos, 3 blue for a legendary creature god. Gets +1/+1 for each card in your hand, and each foretold card you own in exile. At the beginning of your end step, choose a card type, then reveal the top 2 cards of your library. Put all the cards of the chosen type into your hand and the rest on the bottom in any order. We also have Turgid, God of Fright, 3 black for a 4/5 legendary creature god with Menace. Whenever an opponent sacrifices a permanent card, you may put that card from a graveyard onto the battlefield under your control. One of the most powerful cards from Kaldheim, the new set. And I think, oh no, okay, this is still sideboard. I'm getting a little lost here. Pour of the Pages, another copy of it from earlier. We have Mind Rot, 2 and a black, target player discards 2 cards at sorcery speed. We've got Command the Dreadhorde, 4 black for sorcery. Choose any number of target creatures and or planeswalkers in graveyards. Command the Dreadhorde deals damage equal to the total converted mana cost of those cards. Put them onto the battlefield under your control. Piper of the Swarm, 1 in black for a 1/3 human warlock that says rats you control have menace. Pay 1 in a black, create a 1/1 black rat creature token. Pay 2 black, tap, sacrifice 3 rats, gain control of target creature. We have Disenchant, 1 and a white for an instant speed, destroy target artifact or enchantment. Another copy of Time Wipe. Lavinia, Azorius Renegade, 1 and a blue for a legendary human soldier, 2/2. Each opponent can't cast non-creature spells with CMC greater than the number of lands they control. Whenever an opponent casts a spell, if no mana was spent to cast it, counter that spell, so no free spells here. And the last card in the sideboard is Nether Spirit, 1 black black for a 2/2 at the beginning of your upkeep. If Nether Spirit is the only creature card in your graveyard, you may return Nether Spirit to the battlefield. And with that, we'll wrap up this Esper, Spirits, and Control deck tech for today. If you enjoyed what you saw, go ahead and like the video. Share it with your friends if you have friends who are interested in Magic. As always, the deck list will be in the description. And until then, have a good one, and farewell from the vault.